This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. You know, media can be tricky because a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about media, journalists, reporters in any type of field, whether it be political, whether it be cultural, whether it be about sports. We all have these hot button opinions when it comes to that. And that's something that I've always found fascinating. See, I went to school for sports broadcast / telecommunications, which basically meant I want to talk about sports on TV, right? Like that's what I went to school for. And in doing that, right, going to college, learning from broadcast professionals, learning from communication professionals and all of that, you kind of understand that world a little bit and how that world works. Now, me in my professional career, I have had a different come up than most people who go to school for sports broadcasting or telecommunications. I don't know. The way things are now, this might be the new normal, but as far as like people who graduated when I graduated, and I graduated college in 2017, this is a different track than what most are used to, which means that I'm not really clumped in to that same group of some of the people that I graduated college with, where they went through the traditional media track, went through the journalism stuff, all that, and they're firmly in that like traditional media camp, where I'm in the new media camp. And the reason I bring this up is I want to talk about Mike Florio in this 1 minute section of this clip, because I think it's fascinating. They're talking about Ken Dorsey, and I'm going to get to why that's important in a minute, but I need to explain some things before showing this clip makes sense, or not explain some things, but get my feelings off about certain things or certain tropes in media before I show this clip, because the reason I find this clip interesting won't really make sense if I just like toss it to you. You might not catch what I'm getting at there. And one of the things about being a guy like Mike Florio, and this honestly goes with a lot of reporters, that I think frustrates the general public, is that people who have information, people who are reporters, who are also asked to be analysts, are put in a bad situation because they cannot necessarily always say what they feel. Because if there's somebody who you rely on for information, that means they have to manage relationships with people who have information. Again, reporters are basically middlemen, right? There's the information coming from the player's camp, the team's camp, the organization's camp. That person relays that information to this third party, who then relays that information to the public. They are messengers, right? That is the basic form of what media is. And because you have to manage those relationships to get information, you have to be careful about how you talk about things, which is why I don't try to get information. Like, I'm not going to try to manufacture a relationship with somebody just so I can get information and scoops, because I feel like that would deteriorate the quality of what I provide on this channel. I don't think people are coming here for me to break news. They're coming here for me to make sense of what happens in the news. So that's an important distinction that I like to make sure, and why I don't want to do that, because if I had to worry about these relationships behind the scene, I couldn't come out here and be as blunt as I like to be about certain things that are going well or going wrong with the team. And this whole culture of managing relationships and having to kind of curtail that line when you analyze the team is also why I think reporters buy into or believe in the false notion of being unbiased. If you've watched me for a long time, this take is not a surprise. I've talked about it before. I don't love how people use the word bias. I think the current and modern application of it, in the way that people throw this term around and its antonym around to express their discontent, my bad, with whatever coverage that they're watching, I think the use of that is misguided. And hear me out, right? Because this might sound crazy at first, but if you hear me out, I promise you by the end of this video, it will make sense what I'm talking about. Because let's talk about what bias actually is. Because you could say, I'm a Browns fan, so I'm biased. Or that I went to Youngstown State University. I studied sports journalism, sports broadcasting, telecommunications. Maybe I'm biased towards the traditional industry. You could say that I'm biased towards the Youngstown area. You could say I don't watch baseball, right? So I'm biased against the Guardians. You could say all of these things, and all of those things could be true, but does it matter? Because bias is just another phrase for point of view. And we all have a point of view. Like the word unbiased assumes that there is a way to not have a point of view, a perspective, to wipe out everything that makes your consciousness human in order to report on a football team. You're able to just do that. That's impossible. That does not happen. You are not able to erase your point of view in order to cover something in an unbiased manner. You are always going to be biased because you're always going to have a point of view and you're always going to have a perspective about it. The question isn't if you're unbiased or not. The question is, are you being fair about what you're talking about? And are you being honest about what you're talking about? A lot of people conflate bias, unbiased with honest, dishonest. A lot of people conflate being objective or being biased with being fair or being unfair. Those aren't conflatable. If conflatable is a word. If it feel right? It do feel right. When I talk about the Browns, I'm talking about the Browns as somebody who grew up in Cleveland, as somebody who loves the Cleveland Browns and wants to see them win. That's the point of view that I offer. But it doesn't mean that I'm willing to be dishonest about it. If I don't think the Browns are in a position to win a bunch of games, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Browns are in a position to win a bunch of games. I also tend to think my love, proximity, and hours that I put into the team makes me better at knowing how to judge them. And this is the key word, how to judge them honestly and fairly, because that is what people don't like about the media. It's not bias. We all have perspectives. We all have bias, whether we want to admit it or not. To say somebody is unbiased is to say that they lack a unique perspective on things. And I don't even think that's inherently a good thing. It's not objectivity either, which is another concept that gets lumped into this whole argument. That's a whole nother video. But basically what I want to say is it's not objectivity either, because similar to bias, objectivity is not something that really exists in the way that people ascribe it to the media. I think I think people in the media's obsession with appearing objective and appearing unbiased makes them sacrifice things like being fair about the subject that they're talking about or being honest about the subject that they're talking about. And that's kind of why media has a horrible reputation that it is now. Like, no matter where people are on whatever conversation, a negative opinion about the media, I mean, it's like a 70%, like people just don't trust it now, no matter what people believe in. But again, that's a whole nother video for a whole nother time. Basically, I believe people want people in the media to be fair and honest about what they're talking about. If I'm posting a video And I'm talking about why one of your favorite players is not living up to what they're supposed to be living up to. I'm also going to make an effort to be charitable to that player, right? To make sure that I'm considering the circumstances, to make sure that I'm considering the context, to make sure that my criticism of that player, while harsh, is fair. That is what I try to do. It's not unbiased for me to do that. It's not objective for me to do that, but it is fair and it is honest. And that is good coverage. See what I mean? So that brings me back to Mike Florio. I know you guys sat 10 minutes through this video to finally get to the clip that I'm talking about, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the setup, because this clip about Mike Florio, he does something super subtle, but definitely intentional. Let's play it.
Talking about the new offense under Ken Dorsey, who was fired by the Bills. This has been the year of the recycled offensive coordinators. Fired by the Bills during the season. The Bills turned it around without him. He crash lands in Cleveland after they fired Alex Van Pelt, who crash landed on his feet in New England. Here,
did any of you guys catch what goes down in that clip? And I'll try to splice in clips of what I'm talking about while I bring that up. But listen to the framing of Ken Dorsey by Mike Florio, which to me came off incredibly uncharitable, to the point of being unfair to Ken Dorsey, that I can't really take Mike Florio's analysis of the situation too seriously. Like this part.
talking about the new offense under Ken Dorsey, who was fired by the Bills. This has been the year of the recycled offensive coordinators. Fired by the Bills during the season. The Bills turned it around without him.
And the first thing Mike Florio brings up is that Ken Dorsey got fired and that the Bills had a better record without him. Now, if this were the first time you discuss Ken Dorsey after that happened, or like when Ken Dorsey got hired by the Cleveland Browns, that would be relevant information that needs to be upfront. But we are months past that. You've already done your segments about Ken Dorsey being fired. You've already done your segments about Ken Dorsey being hired. So the question to me is like, why was that pertinent information? Like, why did you feel like the second you mentioned Ken Dorsey, you also had to remind people that he got fired? This is a conversation in this segment about David Njoku being excited about the Browns offense. Nothing in the context of this segment dictates that that information needs to be put out there. So why is it in there? It's interesting, right? Why is that in there? Maybe it's Mike Florio trying to sneak his opinion into this conversation while still trying to appear objective, while still trying to appear unbiased. Because I bet if you push Mike Florio on this, he's like, it's just the facts. And it's true. That did happen to Ken Dorsey. The Bills' record got better and he got fired. But is it fair? Is it honest to the conversation that you're having right now? It's not. It's not.
This season, the Bills turned it around without him. He crash lands in Cleveland after they fired Alex Van Pelt, who crash landed on his feet in New England.
This part was the most obvious part to me. Notice how he says Ken Dorsey crash landed in Cleveland, which is a subtle way to frame both Ken Dorsey and the Cleveland Browns as desperate. And if you didn't think that's what he was trying to do, then he says Alex Van Pelt crash landed on his feet in New England. Interesting modification to that phrase. Very interesting modification to that phrase, because Alex Van Pelt and Ken Dorsey both got fired as offensive coordinators and found jobs as offensive coordinators elsewhere on NFL teams. Both made lateral moves after getting fired. Why does one of those guys crash land and the other one crash lands on his feet? What is the difference between Alex Van Pelt, who has not had the level of success as an offensive coordinator that Ken Dorsey has had, by the way? Like, just objectively speaking, Ken Dorsey was seen as the better offensive. We didn't even really think Alex Van Pelt was a real offensive coordinator under Kevin Stefanski. So why does one crash land on their feet and the other one crash land? What are you trying to say there? It's interesting, right? Because to me, I think he's making a statement about how he feels about the Cleveland Browns, right? He's not saying Alex Van Pelt is better than Ken Dorsey, or maybe he is. He's saying, well, if you land in Cleveland, you just crash land. If you land in New England, which again, Mike Florio, I believe he's an East Coast guy, you crash land on your feet. Despite the fact that New England has been a worse team than the Cleveland Browns over the last couple of years, and especially over last year, despite the fact that New England is in a worse situation, despite the fact that New England has a new head coach, right? Like, for the first time in like 20 years, you crash land on your feet in New England. Well, you land in Cleveland, you just crash land, despite the fact that they're a better team, better roster, better everything. You crash land in Cleveland. You crash land on your feet in New England. It's interesting. Again, it's interesting. It's interesting how he frames this conversation subtly. Now, here's one thing I want to discuss, because I think there are going to be some people who hear me talk about this and think I'm reading too much into this. And this is where my education in media, right, my college degree that I have, does come into play. Mike Florio, whether you like his coverage or not, whether you respect him as a journalist, whether you respect him as a reporter, is ultimately still a professional. And what you learn working in professional fields is that you really should never underestimate professionals. Mike Florio has been writing articles. He's been public speaking. He's been using words at a very high level for decades, almost longer than I've been alive. His life is words and phrasing. He is very meticulous about this. He is not doing these things by accident. He is a professional, a veteran professional. Again, you don't got to respect Mike Florio. You don't got to like his work, but you do have to respect that he's been doing it for a very long time. And that respect as a professional, the respect I choose to give him charitably, is why I can see when he's doing a trick like this. It's interesting. Let me know what you guys think about that down in the comment section below. Maybe this is a media literacy class, or at least it felt like a media literacy lecture. Hopefully it wasn't too lecture-ish, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about how things get framed, and if you start to notice how different places try to frame different things about different players, especially when it comes to the Browns. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have you a better night. Peace.